Networking and marketing made simple is for you, the business owner that has a product, service, or message that you truly believe in. My name is Scott Aaron, and each week we'll take a behind the scenes look at real world networking and marketing tactics while leveraging LinkedIn to get what you have in front of many more people. Thanks for spending time with me, and let's get started. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Networking and Marketing Made Simple. Super excited for today's episode for a number of reasons. Obviously, it's another great interview that I have lined up for all of you, but it's not every day that I have a trio, including myself, obviously interviewing two people at once with me. It's only, I think in the 650 plus episodes, I think I've only interviewed a duo maybe 3 or 4 times in the last 6 years. So this is a very special episode. And I would say additionally, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is all about leadership and how the show, Ted Lasso, kind of spurred a business, a book, and a lot of profits, which we're going to kind of get into. So with that being said, Nick Coniglio and Marnie Stockman, welcome to today's episode.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so let's dive right in. And obviously, you guys are the co-authors of Lead It Like Lasso. You started off as colleagues, co-founders, build a business, sold a business, all that stuff. So let's rewind the tape, going back to the colleague days. And if you guys could rewind that tape, press stop, and really land on the moment or moments that you guys feel acted as the catalyst for kind of propelling this opportunity forward. What was that moment for you guys?
Yeah.
So I will start on that, because if you could pass a note across Zoom, not in a chat, but like slide it across the table to someone, I remember the moment that Nick sort of slid the note to me that said, you know what, we should start a company, and because we shouldn't let our folks feel the way we're feeling right now. So there was some angst amongst our core values that didn't feel good. I'll let Nick tell why it didn't feel good. But that moment for me, I remember when he said we should start a company.
Yeah, and we were, Scott, we were an ed tech, we were a technology company, and we had been in a position where we kept on getting acquired. We were acquired and acquired and acquired, and we kept on growing. And the leadership at the time was all about, hey, our core values is to build raving fans. And Marnie and I both were responsible for customer success. Marnie is director of customer success. I own customer support as well as some other engineering teams. And they kept preaching to us, you know, we want customer first, customer first, customer first. But at the exact same time, they kept cutting our staff, right? They grew more and more and more at sales. So our product sales were exploding. We were busy supporting, onboarding all these different customers. And slowly but surely, they just kept eating away at our teams. And it was also Marnie and I's core value of building raving fans, right? That was critical to what we were trying to accomplish. And we just found that there was such a clash between how the world was playing out versus the reality of what we were dealing with. It was a little frustrating, and we thought we could do better, and we decided to take a stab at that.
I love that. And, you know, having raving fans, and I mean, Seth Godin talks about it, Donald Miller talks about it, that, and my wife and I believe the same thing, that you don't need hundreds of thousands and millions of people to really make a difference in the business world, or, you know, in life in general. It's creating that fluidity between yourselves and the people that you're looking to impact, whether it's people outside of your organization or within the organization, that makes the biggest difference. So when we're talking about Lead Like Lasso, and that, you know, it's funny, there's my wife and I, you know, we run a company together. We have 3 different businesses that we run, and there was this negative stigma that TV rots your brains, right? that you shouldn't, watch too much TV, this, that, or the other. And in all fairness, there was a time in my life where I canceled my cable bill and I read books, meditated, podcasts, all that stuff, which I still do. But for me, the way that my brain works is if I don't shut it off, meaning if I don't have a little bit of an outlet in the house, like TV, I won't sleep that well. The neurons keep wiring and firing. So we're not ashamed to say that, we dedicate about 60 minutes a day to unwinding in bed before we go to sleep and before we read, to watching some TV. There's no harm in that. It's all about balance. And obviously there are a lot of different choices of TV that you can watch. The true crime documentaries, which we love. The Love is Blind type shows, which we love, because it just makes us realize how special our relationship is. But then you have the feel-good shows like Ted Lasso, which it was an interesting concept for a show. The messaging behind it. The one thing that Nancy and I really appreciated in the, I think, 4 seasons of that show was each character, no matter how big or small, got the proper character development that it deserved. And it wasn't just focused on Ted. It wasn't just focused on a single person. They really did a great job of really bringing it all together. So what was it about that show for the two of you that obviously it inspired the book Lead Like Lasso, but where did that kind of bubble to the surface where you're like, you know what? The leadership skills that are out there today should be mimicked more by some of the lessons that can be learned from this TV show. How did that all come about?
Yeah, I'll start with this, Marnie, and then you can take it from there. But you're exactly right, Scott. It's, although the show is kind of set with the backdrop of a soccer club, the show itself was really about relationships. It was about personal growth, and what we kind of really felt was the power of positivity, right? And there were so many other things, authenticity, so forth and so on. But really, it resonated with us for a couple of reasons. One is for the 3 years that it aired, those were the same 3 years that we kind of started from scratch, scaled and sold, a multi-million-dollar business. And when we watched the show, it really resonated with us. Not only did we kind of see ourselves a little bit in kind of the traits of the characters within the show, but it was also, there was a lot of stuff that we aspired to be in with whatever business we were going on next. And we thought that was a great way to relate a lot of different concepts that we strongly believed in. But really, the whole reason is that I think we kind of wrote about it, was that I started watching Ted Lasso first, and I'm watching this character. And like you said, Scott, I think every character has their own arc and their own different ways to lead. But specifically, when I watched Ted Lasso, I was seeing Marty Stockman, right? Everything that he did in that show was what I saw from Marty before we started the business together, especially when we co-founded that business, in terms of being authentic, in terms of our goofiness, right? In terms of the power of positivity. It really struck me as, you know what? I'm a little bit of a bunch of the other characters, but Marnie is so much Ted Lasso and a little bit of Rebecca Welton as well, that we could really relate the concepts that we believe to be successful using this show as the backdrop.
So it's interesting, and that's always so flattering. I aspire to be a better Ted Lasso in this world. I started out as a high school math teacher, and in my interviews in 1992, well before Ted Lasso was even conceived, when folks asked me my philosophy of education, I would say it is a teacher's responsibility to help every student become the best version of themselves. And then when Ted said that in episode 1, I was like, all right, well, I can see where Nick got this. And you mentioned something that I think it absolutely resonated with us, that each character got its own development. And so many times in a show like that, all of those locker room characters would have been like NPCs, non-player characters in gaming, right? They would have just been just barely moving the episode forward and the plot forward. But he showed how every single person's important. And I think in a business and in life, it's really important to recognize that everybody else needs to be living their best version. And if you can help everyone, right, rising tide lifts all ships, and no one in this life is an NPC.
Yeah, I also think it kind of shows the I don't want to say character development because that would be, playing into the show. I want to talk about the human development that each of these people had, going from, people being people pleasers and doormats, being afraid of sharing their sexual orientation and all the things that, again, I think it allowed all of the people who tuned in and really latched onto it, you could relate to at least one of the characters. But at the same time, even if you didn't relate to all the characters, you still enjoyed the, I would say, the overarching theme of every episode, every season, and obviously the series itself. And I think that's really important when you're talking about leadership, because whether you're running, a small and mighty team like my wife and I have with our organization, or, if you're in that hierarchy in corporate America or wherever you are, your responsibility as a leader is to develop the people beneath you, to raise them up. And it's getting people to recognize their own personal greatness, what they're actually capable of doing. And that could be reflected upon many different things. I think all of us can relate back to maybe a teacher that we had growing up that saw something in ourselves that we didn't necessarily see. It could have been a coach that we had in sports that saw something in us. It could be our parents, someone. And I think that's really important in leadership nowadays, for that leader in that position. With great power comes great responsibility, right? That's what Spider-Man says. And
Yeah. Peter Parker. Yeah.
Peter Parker. And the fact is that you have to see the invisible in the people that you're looking to inspire and lift up. So my question to the both of you is, where do you feel some of the holes and gaps are right now in the leadership world, not just from maybe that entrepreneur that's running that small but powerful team, um, all the way on the other side of the coin to that mid-level executive, that C-suite executive that's leading a team of hundreds and maybe sometimes even thousands. Where do you think some of the holes and gaps are in leadership now that can be fixed with a different shift in a mentality like that of Ted Lasso?
I think some of it is acknowledging and maybe really doing the work to understand yourself as a leader. I suspect Nick's thinking accidental leader, right? Many of those
Yeah.
that first-time managers end up there because they're high performers and don't necessarily have a leadership background. And so they need to do the work to understand themselves and their own core values, their own vision, so that they can better communicate that. Nick, is that what you were thinking?
I mean, I think you nailed it, right? I think so many entrepreneurs are, we call them in corporate America, we call them accidental leaders, and in our world, right, where they're accidental entrepreneurs, right? They were really good at something and they wanted to figure out a way to monetize that. And there's a difference between functional expertise and, like you said, Scott, the mindset shift of growing and developing other people. And I think a lot of people fail to recognize that. I've spent my entire career being employee number single digit between 0 and 10 for the last 30 years, growing companies. And when we were successful, it was about servant leadership. It was not about speaking, it was about listening, right? It was not about outcomes as much as it was about growth and development of the team. And I think, it's just human nature to think of, okay, I am now a leader. I have to make decisions. I am so focused on output. And it doesn't seem intuitive sometimes to focus on the growth and development of teams. But I think history will say for anybody that's been successful, that is the reason why they were successful.
So my wife and I believe in something called the Feel Good Business Model. It's a book that we co-authored earlier this year together. I mean, she's written some solo books, so have I, but we really wanted to kind of journal and turn it into a book about how we've grown and scaled our business to work 3 days a week, and how other people can do the same thing. And now some people, grow to scale to create flexibility and freedom for themselves. Other people grow to scale to sell. So, people hear this story of the two of you building out this leadership framework that helped start scale your software company that ended up allowing you to then sell it. So a lot of people may be thinking, what drives someone, because you're at that fork in the road, you're at that tipping point, so to speak, where you can continue driving the car, you can continue to increase the revenue, you can continue to build, but then there's that, I would say, that moment where you're like, you know what, I'm going to go the other way, and I'm going to address or hear, a potential offer to sell this, something that we've built. So what was that fork in the road like for the two of you? And ultimately, what do you feel was that tipping point decision for the both of you to veer off in that direction of ultimately selling the business?
Well, I think, it wasn't necessarily a fork. When we had the original idea of starting the business, we actually didn't have, we started the business in a market that we were completely foreign to. We had no idea what that market, the managed services industry, what that really was. And we went in with the notion of, all right, we are going to figure out, because we had, like I said earlier, we had grown businesses. We just were never the owners, founders of those businesses. We went in with the notion of, we're going to figure out how to run a business and scale it in such a way that it offers us the flexibility to do what we really want, which is to make an impact on people. And then along with that is the flexibility and, the ability to kind of, make our own work hours, all the things that you had mentioned, Scott, balance what's important in life. We both have, families, and that's very important to us to make sure we spend enough time with them. So we went in with the mindset of starting that company that we were gonna figure out a way to scale it, grow it, and eventually exit from that company, so we can kind of do what we really wanted to do, which was to help as many people as we can. We both have 20-something-year-old children, and it's really near and dear to our heart, right? Which is to figure out how to communicate with them, how to work with them, how to really share what we've learned to help them become the best version of themselves. So we kind of took your fork in the road analogy, and we made that decision very early on in the process to kind of be where we're at today.
And I think one thing that's important for that, especially folks that are listening that are thinking, well, do I want to sell? We had been through acquisitions, as Nick said, where we weren't one of the owners, right? But we knew what acquisitions looked and felt like. So we knew as we were coming upon our own decision to exit, what that would look and feel like, and tried to set that up for the most successful outcome. And we were very successful, right? We've seen the good and bad and ugly of acquisitions, and we primed the company to be set up to be in a very good, happy, healthy place, which made the decision much easier because we know how else that can go.
So as business continues to evolve, and obviously in the last, I would say, year plus, with the advent of AI and all the new technologies out there, you have to stay up to date. My wife and I are big researchers in the sense of we always want to be on top of what's kind of moving and shaking in the world. And, leadership is no different. So where do you see leadership as it stands right now? Not so much from a foundational thing that's taught inside of organizations, but where do you see it now in sense of where it's going to go from an educational resource standpoint, an evolution standpoint? How is it going to be more leaned on when it comes to helping people to grow and scale their business and even sell their business? What sort of trends do you see going on say in the next 12 to 24 months?
So we like to say it's trending human. One of the things that Adam Grant, who wrote Think Again and Hidden Potential, in Hidden Potential, he talks about the fact that in a world of automation, AI, digital transformation, etc., the thing that will make a company, a human, a brand stand out, and I know for sure that you believe this to be true as well, is character, right? That it is your personal core values, your character skills, your soft skills, leadership skills that will help you stand out to be more successful. So that's why we say trending human.
It's almost as though so many, I mean, just to your point around artificial intelligence and AI, right? Everything's becoming commoditized, right? I mean, especially as it relates to technical skills, but even, and I'm sure you see this, Scott, on LinkedIn, right? People are not generating, they're not being authentic. A lot of people are not bringing themselves across on LinkedIn. They're using AI generated prompts to generate the person they think they should be. And I think to some extent, as leaders, we have to be very wary of that, right? It's recognizing authenticity, and to Marnie's point, really it's the character skills, right? That finding those character skills as leaders is going to be more important than ever, because there's this big charade and mask of everybody out there that kind of acts the same because it's all being generated. Not all, but a lot of it's being generated through AI. At least that's our opinion. I don't know if you agree with that, Scott, but that's something we definitely see.
Well, just because something is available to you doesn't mean it's good for you.
Preach.
Plain and simple. And again, my wife and I are obsessed with AI for certain things in our business. Helping to edit some of our long form video into short form video, to get prompts and ideas about content that we can push out on social media, frameworks and such like that. But to your LinkedIn point, the one thing that never gets old and never gets out of touch is the human aspect to creating a connection with another person. And just because you have something available to you on a social platform like LinkedIn doesn't mean you A, have to use it, or B, it's going to help your business. And I think that's the one thing that people need to realize. And I'm a big proponent of this, and really telling people that if you can't take 30 minutes a day to really seek out the right people to connect with on LinkedIn, you can't sit down for a few minutes and actually physically yourself type up an outbound message to a new connection to see if you can move the connection further, or you can't genuinely comment yourself and actually put some actually thought and meaning behind what you're commenting on, maybe LinkedIn isn't for you. Because I think people are looking to pass all of that off and pass the baton to other people. Now, I don't want to regress on this statement, but I will say there's times and there's aspects of your business where it should be outsourced. The last thing that you want to outsource is your human touch, because that is something that is authentically, genuinely, and individually you. No one knows your voice, your tone, your thoughts, your feelings better than yourself. So with leadership, and there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are in maybe a solopreneur role. They're an individual coach or consultant or service provider that is slowly moving towards starting to scale, where they're bringing on their first one or two team members. That to credit the both of you, you guys have been in leadership roles, so you were obviously, you had to grow from that, grow into it. What's your best tips or words of advice to that person that knows that they have to step into a leadership role? They're just not exactly sure the best way to do it.
I would say, first, be clear on your vision, because you're going to need to be able to communicate that really clearly to anyone that you hire. And if you don't have clarity of your own vision and your own core values, you may struggle with getting it right out of the gate. And I say that from personal experience.
I think the other, just another thing that if I was giving a solopreneur kind of a tip, just about to bring on those first 1 or 2 employees to start working with them, is to realize the expectations. I think a lot of challenges that I've had, in that moment is that I know I'm working so much harder, right? It's my business, it's my life, right? This is my existence, right? This is our baby. When we talk about, we have all these different names of these companies that we start, right? So one of the things that we talk about is we build out personal operating system and communication guides, right? To set expectations with those people, to understand, okay, this is how you interact with me, this is what I expect. And vice versa, you give them the opportunity to do that as well, because it's sometimes hard to remember that, okay, this isn't their baby, this isn't their life, and you have to reset expectations just getting forward. At least when I think back to that time when we were just hiring that first or that second employee, you get used to it over time, but when you're first starting to do that, you kind of put that onus like, okay, this is everything to them, when it's not necessarily everything to them. So set the expectations out front, both with yourself internally of what you should expect from them, but also with them on how they should expect to communicate and interact with you.
Love that. So as we start to wind down, obviously, I want you guys to talk a little bit about your book, Lead It Like Lasso, first and foremost. And then, you could share with the audience, what are you guys now working on as you're stepping into a different role after, selling your company? So share with the audience a little bit about the book, Lead It Like Lasso, which obviously they're going to be able to grab a copy in the description of the episode. And, what things should they take away with it and from it? And what's on tap for Marnie and Nick as far as next iterations and steps in their business journey together?
Fair. Well, we're easy to find on leaditlikelasso.com, and thankfully we have unique names, so you can also find us on social, on LinkedIn, right, as ourselves. But we are Lead It Like Lasso everywhere. The book itself is titled Lead It Like Lasso: A Leadership Book for Life, Your Life. So our number one rule, thanks to Danny Rojas, who on Ted Lasso was, football is life. We said leadership is life because we believe everybody's a leader, whether it's in the boardroom, a classroom, a locker room, or your living room. So I think a big takeaway is to understand that you need to learn to lead yourself, even if that is your sole role, to lead yourself. But if you're going to lead others, you really need to understand yourself as a leader. So that is a bit of what the book does, is helps you get a better understanding of yourself. We have activities in there to help them walk through, really, like Nick said, we have a personal operating system and a communication guide to help you walk through and learn more about yourself.
I think and I'll answer the second part of the question, but just to add on to that, I think the other thing is that, it's not like other leadership books, and believe me that we are avid consumers of all types of self-improvement and leadership books, but it's not written by researchers, right? It's written from practical real world experience. Like Marnie said, it's interactive, it's got activities, it's a framework. But what we're most proud of, I think, is the fact that it's relatable. Using the show Ted Lasso, it makes it interesting and different and a pretty easy read. From the standpoint of what's next, we are really grasping on to really Marnie's mission her entire life, which has become my mission since I have a family now, which is to do whatever we can to help other people just improve and level up in life, become the best versions of themselves. We have a master class that was just recently launched that is not, it's very similar to any other master class online in terms of how you take it. But again, it's very interactive, it's engaging, it's activity driven. It really gets to the point around personal leadership, with that core value of you really can't lead others until you begin to lead yourself. And once you do that, it's typically very scalable to teams and organizations. And we even, we did one of the outcomes and the outputs of our master class is to build a personal pitch deck, right? This is as entrepreneurs, we're used to going in and pitching our business and our value proposition to either potential acquisition, acquirers or other businesses or customers. We believe that you should be able to pitch yourself to anybody. And that can only help in whatever your career objectives are, your family objectives, or what have you. And we just hope to continue on building off of that brand, just providing tools and utilities and eventually applications to help you do that, become the best version of yourself.
Love that. And again, for anyone that's listening or watching, obviously you'll have the direct link to the website of where you can learn more about Nick and Marnie, and obviously the book Lead It Like Lasso, and obviously their URLs to their LinkedIn accounts will also be in there. So you're not going to have to look too far in order to connect with them. So before we sign off, final question to each of you. Whoever wants to go first, it's completely fine. I'm going to say ladies first, just to kind of put that out there. What does success truly mean to the both of you?
I think it is really first being able to have some security for the family, and then helping as many folks as possible to make a positive impact.
I think that's great. Marnie knows that is my one value of creating security. So I would typically answer with that, but we talk actually in our book, we talk about legacy, right? And projecting your legacy. And really at the end of the day, it's doing work that my family is proud of is what drives me every day. And I can tell you right now, my wife and son are, my wife definitely, my son, we'll see, but I think they're very proud of the work that we do in just trying to add value to other people's lives. And however I can quantify that, and we can quantify that, that to me is success.
Love that. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. My wife, my son, I just had my first bench press contest over the weekend. He came, he filmed it, and he's 12, so he's at a very influential age. He plays all sorts of sports. So, and my dad got me into it, and now he's getting into it. So it's really cool to see. And I would say the other thing is, just doing our best to leave all those around us better. And again, I just wanted to thank the both of you for coming on today, and not only for everything you've accomplished, but for writing that book, because it's something that obviously is going to impact anyone who reads it. And it's kind of like that trickle-down effect where one person reads it, they talk about it, they recommend it, and I think that's the goal. So I just want to push all the people that are listening and watching, go to the description, grab the book, and recommend it to someone that you know that it could impact. And before we close out, I just want to thank everyone for their consistent support of this podcast. The day that we are recording this, I just eclipsed the 1 million download mark for the podcast. So 6 years in the making, just shy of 6 years. And I just want to thank everyone for the continued support and all the ratings and reviews and everything that you do to keep this thing going. So everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Love and gratitude, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you could, please support this podcast by hopping over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or any place that you're listening to this. Leave us a rating and review. Let us know what you loved most and what you would like to hear more of. But also, if you would like to learn how to take your business to the next level, whether it's using LinkedIn or working directly with myself and Nancy in our intimate group coaching programs, you can head over to www.thetimetogrowth.com or scottaaron.net to learn more. Thank you again for your support, love and gratitude, and I'll talk to you soon.